Andrew is correct. All right, so a lot of things were going on. Hey, shh. Okay, listen. In the 1930s, Germany was in a bit of a rough spot, but there was this one guy, his name was von Braun. Everyone say von Braun. Von Braun was a German scientist whose passion was space travel. Okay? I don't know if you know your history or not, but there was nobody in space in the 1940s. All right? But his hope, his goal was that he would build rockets that would one day go to space. Now, 1939 came around, and anyone know what was going on in 1939? There was this. There's a really popular guy. Yeah, this really unpopular guy named Adolf Hitler, who was actually popular in Germany, had started a war that became World War II, and von Braun came under increasing pressure to produce a useful military weapon. All right, he delivered in 1942, his group successfully tested the A-4 missile, firing the weapon nearly 60 miles into the atmosphere. The trial caught Hitler's attention, and the Reich began to mass produce the rockets at a feverish pace. The project also drew the interest of the SS, which briefly imprisoned von Braun as part of an attempt to take over the program. By the later stages of the war, when von Braun's missiles began to rain down on London, Nazi propaganda had given them the name. Anyone know what these missiles were called? First missiles ever made. They were called the V2 missile. It's a very popular thing. Okay? Like it's a big history fact. Okay. Named because they were intended as retribution for the Allied bombings of German cities. Von Braun and his team were directly responsible for what took place with these missiles. Tonight we're going to start a new series, and we're going to be talking about idols. All right? We're going to be talking about idols. And tonight's topic specifically is the gift. All right? So the series we're in is idols, but again, the title for tonight is the gift. And we're going to talk about one of my favorite passages from some of my favorite people, the Israelites and Moses. But there's a few things that I need you guys to know, all right? And we might talk about this more in the future, but just real brief. The definition of an idol is it's an image or representation of a god used as an object of worship, all right? Anyone ever seen an idol before? Everyone in here should raise your hand. Everyone has for sure seen an idol. Seen an idol? No. An idol. All right, listen. I'm not going to talk tonight about like physical idols. All right. However, I think it's very important that you all know that idols are real. Like people still to this day, a lot of times we think, oh, well, in the Bible they had real idols. No. To this day, there are real idols, which is just an image made in the image of a lowercase g God. All right. Made in the image of a God. Okay. To worship. All right. And again, I might talk about that more in depth later, but for tonight, here's what I want you to know. First off, if you have any idols in your house or know someone with idols, that's not a good thing. It's actually a very not good thing, right? And you should really stay away from that. You're like, Cole, I've never even seen Hinduism, Buddhism are really, really big into idols. A lot of yoga studios, like just have idols sitting out. Like, and that is a real thing that was created to worship a god. Even if that's not what they're using it for, okay, those are real idols that have been made to worship a god. All right, and again, we're going to talk, what? Owen's for sure. We're going to have a conversation in small group. All right. But again, idols are real things. And tonight, again, I'm not going to talk about like actual physical idols so much. I'm going to talk about more what the enemy uses as strategies involving idols. Write your questions down, bro. Small group, that's what it's for. Okay? I'm going to talk about what the enemy uses his strategies. Because, right, God is real, the enemy is real, right? Just like God is real, the enemy is real. Ecclesiastes 1:9 says, what has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. What is this saying? It is saying that everything that has been will be again, okay? Well, it's Ecclesiastes 1:9.
Because he doesn't know. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastics. I'm looking at it right now. Just put ECC. That's good enough.
Yeah, you see that.
I can't spell it, so.
Yeah, it autocorrects to Ephesians.
All right. Again, here's what I want you guys to get from that. Shh, listen. Okay? Here's what I want you guys to get from that. All right, the same strategies that the enemy used to use, he's using today. All right, he's not developed some new plan. He's not developed some new strategy. The same strategies he used to use, he's currently using today. So as we read through our story in just a second, I don't want you to look at it as just something that used to happen, but I want you to think about how is it that I do this? How is it that people around me do this? How is the enemy using the same strategy I'm reading about here to come after me? Got it? Our main passage tonight is out of Exodus chapter 32, starting in verse 1. It is actually Exodus on the screen. All right, and we're going to read verses 1 through 5. Exodus chapter 32, 1 through 5. When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, "Come, make us gods, who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him." Pause. So Moses, this dude in the Old Testament, I don't know if you've heard about him before, he's kind of a big deal, all right, had been sent to Egypt where the Israelites were in slavery, right? He went to Egypt. There were all these plagues. They got out of Egypt. And after they got out of Egypt, they crossed the Red Sea. They went into the desert, and they're wandering. And at this point in the story, we find them somewhere in the desert. And Moses has gone up on top of a mountain to talk with God, and all of the rest of Israel has been left at the bottom of this mountain. All right, there's like 1.5 million people sitting at the bottom of this mountain while Moses is up on top talking to God, and they get impatient, and that's where our story is. Verse 2, Aaron answered them, "Take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons, and your daughters are wearing, and bring them to me." So all the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron. He took what they had handed him and made it into an idol cast in the shape of a calf, fashioned it with a tool. Then they said, "These are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of the calf and announced, "Tomorrow there will be a festival to the Lord." So the next day the people rose early and sacrificed burnt offerings and presented fellowship offerings. Afterward they sat down to eat and drink and got up to indulge in revelry. Go straight into my first point right here. Then I'm going to explain. All right, building an idol will waste and twist the gifts that God has given you. Building an idol will waste and twist the gifts that God has given you. Verse 2, that what I just read. Aaron answered them, "Take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons, your daughters are wearing and bring them to me." Anyone know where they got the gold earrings from? They got them from the Egyptians. Good job, right? So whenever the Israelites were leaving Egypt, so they've been slaves there for 400 years. Okay, so that would be like their grandparents were slaves, they were slaves, their parents were slaves. Okay, they've been slaves there for 400 years. That's what, almost twice as long as we've been a country, just to give you some context? No. Yeah, we're like 250.
1700.
We're 250 as a country. They had been slaves for 400 years, so roughly twice as long as we've been a country, they were slaves in Egypt. As they're leaving, okay, the Egyptians, it says in, let me make sure I got it. Exodus chapter 12, this is what it says. The Israelites did as Moses instructed them and asked the Egyptians for articles of silver and gold and for clothing. The Lord had made the Egyptians favorably disposed towards the people, and they gave them what they asked for. So they plundered the Egyptians. So as the people of Israel are leaving the Egyptians like throw their precious belongings at the Israelites, right? They give them all of these different things. And then the Israelites leave there, they go into the wilderness. And what is like one of the first things that they do with the gold that God had given them, they take the gift that God had given them and they manipulate it into something that they worshiped instead of him. Okay, they took the gift that God had given them and twisted it to what it was not meant to do. My story I told in the beginning, right? German scientist. He wanted to be a space traveler. He was really passionate about space. This is not a bad thing, correct? No. However, the Germans took what he was trying to create in order to expand what people knew, in order to go somewhere that would be beautiful. Anyone ever seen a picture of space? It's so cool. Like a picture of space from space, insane, right? They took what he was trying to make and they forced it to become something it was never meant to be, where they were blowing up the people of London. That scientist, one of his remarks that he was quoted making was, whenever the bombs started, or the missiles started going off in London, was he's like, they worked perfectly. They just landed on the wrong planet. You see, they had taken what it was that he had made and twisted it to do something awful. And the Israelites in this passage have taken a gift that God gave them and they've twisted it into something that was awful and used it to worship. I think we do the same thing. So here's my next question. What idol have you made out of the gifts that God has given you? What idol have you made out of the gifts that God has given you? I think we do this 3 ways. I'm going to be really straightforward and plain. I think we do this 3 different ways most of the time. We take gifts that God gives us and we twist it into something and we end up worshiping that thing rather than God. First way, ourselves. You're like, what are you talking about, Cole? Let me explain. I believe God gives each of us abilities and talents. And if we are not careful, we will very easily use what God has given us, our abilities, our talents, and we will use it to glorify ourselves. Right? God gave us all abilities and talents not to glorify ourselves, but so that we could glorify and point people towards him. Common ways that this would happen. If you're really, really smart, it's really easy to build yourself up. If you're really talented, whether that's athletics or music or whatever, pick your poison, it's really easy to take all those gifts and talents and start to build it towards yourself rather than using what God has given you to point others to him. Right? Because the reality of it is that whatever God has given you, he can take away. We are not in ourselves sufficient. All right? And through doing that, what we do is, again, just like the Israelites took the gold that God had given them and they made it into this calf that they ended up worshiping, we take the gifts that God gives us and we make it into something that's not meant to be. Second way that we do this, people around us. People around us, God gives us. I'm just going to go ahead and take the low-hanging fruit right here. Say the most common way that I see this happening would be in dating relationships. All right? Not saying it's always like that, but it's just the easiest example to draw up for you. All right? Let's say there's a girl who, has really wanted to get married. Nothing wrong with that. All right? Finds this boy. After finding this boy, after a while, she's never really wanted to, kiss before marriage. She's never wanted to do any kind of touching before marriage. She always thought that going to school was going to church was good. Being connected in church was really good. And then after a while, whenever they would start dating, maybe she's like, you know what? Maybe we could just kiss. He wants to kiss. Maybe we'll kiss. Or maybe we can just make out. It's just making out. Or maybe, what's a little touchy touch? It's really nothing. Or maybe, I've always thought going to church was a good thing, but we're just going to go hang out on Sunday night. And what's happened is they've idolized this relationship, this desire that God gave them to be married, which I believe is a godly desire, and they've put that above God. They've taken a gift from God, something that's supposed to be building towards him, and they've manipulated it to where it is now the number one thing in their life. They've built an idol out of something that was not meant to be there. I'm not saying relationships are bad, okay? I think the Lord wants all of you probably to get married. Maybe not necessarily. If you want to get married, the Lord probably wants you to get married at some point, okay? And that's a great thing. But whenever we get our priorities out of whack and we make that person the number one and they're the idol and they're what we're following rather than following Jesus, we've idolized it. We've taken what God is meaning to be beautiful, we've melted it down and we've turned it into a golden calf. Last thing. So we do it with ourselves, we do it with people around us, and we do it with things that we have been given. Things we have been given. Guys, all of us live pretty privileged lives here. I know privilege looks different to some of us, but all of us have phones and food and we get toys to some extent or another, right? Some extent or another. And it is really, really easy to take these different things and make them the most important thing. Or maybe you're like me. This is my favorite. I don't typically make idols out of things that I currently have. I like to make idols out of things that I do not have yet. Great example. No. This last week, okay, this is big news, guys. If you don't know, I'm about to change your life. All right, this last week, Canon released the R6 Mark III. Guys, it can shoot 7K open gate raw. Oh my goodness. 4K 120 uncropped. Oh my goodness, it is insane. All right. Full HDMI ports, headphone port, let's see. I mean like 87 other things that I could name, but I won't waste your time. All right. Listen. Fun fact, that's a $3,000 camera. Your boy ain't got $3,000 laying around. I'm not gonna have $3,000 laying around anytime soon. Yeah, I know more about that camera than I do many books of the Bible. Okay. And it is really easy for me, and Ashlyn can attest to this, but you don't have to too strongly. But it is really easy for me to get really caught up on things that are on earth and obsess over them. I know more about pickleball paddles and like, I could talk about pickleball paddles for like 4.5 hours, guys. Like the materials they're made of. That's stupid. That is so stupid. But listen, I've made an idol out of something because I put it in priority above Jesus. Okay. I believe maybe one day the Lord wants me to have a Canon R6 Mark III. However, until he gives it to me, it really doesn't matter. It shoots 7K open gate raw. Okay. It really doesn't matter. All right. I've made an idol out of something that shouldn't be. All right. So again, ourselves, other people, and then things. Here are 3 different challenges you could potentially take. Then we're going to go into small groups. First challenge, if you struggle with making yourself an idol, then you need to start by thanking God for the things he allows you to do. If you think you're all that in a bag of chips and you're using the abilities, gifts, and talents you have to build yourself up rather than build God up, you need to start thanking him that he's given you the ability to do whatever it is that you do. Okay, because the perspective is not, I can do this. The perspective is that God has allowed me to do this, so how can I glorify him? Number 2, if you struggle with making people into idols, here's what I want you to do. Talk to Jesus throughout the day. Tell him what's going on. Ask him what he thinks about what is going on. You're like, Cole, why am I doing that? Because I think a lot of times whenever we make people our idols, what we really are looking for is we're looking for companionship and someone to fill us. And only God can satisfy. So if we don't start to build relationship with him, we're going to continue to cycle through people. All right, so you need to talk with him. And number 3, if you make idols out of things, here's what I want you to do. Limit how much time you're spending on that thing. Great example. We just did phones, right? Low-hanging fruit. It's too easy, okay? Say TV. If TV's an idol for you and you just absolutely adore and love and worship it, maybe you should only watch 30 minutes of it a day. For me, I don't need to watch 47 YouTube videos this week on the Canon R6 Mark III because I'm not going to buy it, okay? So again, whatever that is, limit that time, okay? Go small groups.